All right, so we have round number 2 here of pod play. Brad Nelson, 1-0. He's tied at the top of his pod, playing Death's Shadow. He's against Tom Ross on green-white Tron. And Tom wins the die roll, and he leads out. He starts on Urza's Power Plant into Chromatic Star. Brad on a 6-card hand for this game.
And this is one of the ways that Tron can beat Death Shadow. Death Shadow has sort of a fail rate. You need very specific things. You don't really have card selection. And some of your opening hands, there's Gitaxian Probe, Street Wraiths, and you have to rely on them turning into cards of consequence, and that's not a guarantee.
Brad will fire off a Street Wraith and a Gitaxian Probe, and we'll get to see what he's playing against. So Tom Ross's keep here was, as it looks like, a pair of Ulamogs, and then 2 Tron pieces, a Chromatic Sphere, a Star, and a Horizon Canopy. So he's hoping to, turn 4 Ulamog here?
Speaking of fail rate, this hand needs a couple things to go right as well. Tom is both looking to naturally hit Tron in addition to a second tower, and he didn't have any ways to specifically tutor for that effect.
Well, it may not matter. Brad, and this is, we talked about these cantrip-heavy decks, keeping something with Mishra's Bauble, Street Wraith, and Gitaxian Probe, fails to find a land on the first turn between all those in the draw step, so he just passes.
Brad has, on camera, turn 2 killed with no land hands. I don't think that's going to happen this game, but I'm just saying.
Invitational.
Yeah.
Season 2.
This is a thing that there is video evidence of. This deck is capable of that, though just with these redraws, there's no guarantee that he finds what he's looking for.
Well, big draw for Tom Ross. He's going to go ahead and crack that Star he played into an Ancient Stirrings. Sets up, takes Karn Liberated. He does not have Tron just yet. He plays the Tower and the Chromatic Sphere. So he has his 2 pieces. If he finds Urza's Mine, that early Karn should be good enough.
Yeah, finding the Karn made his hand a lot better. Now he just has to find Tron, and he already has something going. And he's not just sitting there with a handful of Ulamogs. He actually gets to be proactive.
Was going to have to do it quickly. On Brad Nelson's side, he does find his land. It's a copy of Bloodstained Mire. You see, first he's going to Street Wraith down to 14. But multiple Monastery Swift Spears in hand. He's not going to have too much trouble getting some pressure on Tom now.
And it looks like Brad has a Thoughtseize in hand, likely strongly considering that option. If you remove that Karn, suddenly there's a lot more pressure on the top of Tom's deck for him to actually be able to play Magic.
Well, Tom has 2 Ulamogs, and it's not just one Tron piece he needs to make Ulamog. He needs a lot of things, right?
Right. He needs 3rd Tron piece and 2nd Urza's Tower specifically.
Yeah, that's a lot to ask for. And you see, Brad is going to go down to 11. He'll start on Death's Shadow. And now, the question, can Tom Ross respond with Tron? He's had 2 turns. You see, the answer is really a no. It looks like he has Horizon Canopy, Basic Forest, Oblivion Stone, and then Ulamog Karn.
Mm-hmm. And with Tom not naturally producing Tron, now suddenly with Brad as this threat on the battlefield, he's in very good position.
Yeah, Tom cracks Chromatic Sphere for green, draws a card, draws a 2nd copy of Karn.
That's not what he wanted.
No, it's with these ramp-style decks, you need your accelerants, you need your lands, and your creature, and your payoffs. He's heavy on payoff spells right now.
Mm-hmm. He'd be happy to even just have one more egg in his hand. Chromatic Sphere, Chromatic Star is a redraw, but without that, he's very much just looking to the top of his deck.
And I say this was a big turn for Tom. You see, he had the option between playing Horizon Canopy and cracking it and trying to find Tron, or casting Oblivion Stone. He went for the Oblivion Stone, just casting the artifact, maybe hoping to get his way up to 5 lands naturally.
Mm-hmm. And on his next turn, if he just taps 2 land, cracking the Canopy, and he just has Urza's Tower, other Tron land, he can crack the Oblivion Stone on the following turn.
Yeah. Brad's going to Thoughtseize. Tom's hand pretty Thoughtseize proof here. 2 Karns, 2 Ulamogs.
Mm-hmm. Given that Tom top decked the 2nd Karn, this Thoughtseize lost a lot of value, but it is good that Brad sequenced the way that he did for that reason.
Well, it does Thoughtseize puts Brad down to 9. It deals 2 damage to himself. Death's Shadow will grow up to a 4/4.
Mm-hmm.
See, Brad will select a Karn, attack for 4. Tom Ross down to 15. Did Brad hit a 2nd land? We'll find out.
If he had a 2nd land
didn't.
that mattered, yeah, you would almost assuredly seen a pre-combat Monastery Swift Spear.
And a big draw here for Tom Ross. He hits an Urza piece, and it's Urza's Mine. He's just going to cast the Karn, exile Death's Shadow, and that may have just got him the game.
Yeah, that's a huge pickup. And Brad found a land, but it's not a green source. He can't cast Wild Nakatl. He can cast some Monastery Swift Spears, get something going that way. I don't
Yeah.
believe he has a pump spell, so it's going to be hard for him to get through to Karn here. I believe a couple main deck lightning bolts. There's 2 lightning bolts in the deck, so if he had that, he could deal with this Karn. That would help him somewhat, but he's still in a bad spot.
Yeah, and this is what Brad was hoping to avoid when he thought seized Tom. He hoped that by thought seizing away Tom's Karn, he would avoid Tom top decking the Tron piece and hitting him with the Karn. And then Tom just had him at every angle. He had the Karn, a second Karn, and then drew the Tron piece on top of it.
Yep.
So Brad has Lightning Bolt in his hand. He has Swift Spear in his hand. He can kill the Karn, but the difficulty is that when Tom gets up to just holding up Oblivion Stone mana, what does Brad do then?
Yeah, then he just has to chip in slowly. Death Shadow is not a deck that is good at chipping in. It's good at killing the opponent really in one combat step.
Sure.
And as soon as he starts cashing in a significant number of pump spells, then Tom can just crack the Oblivion Stone. In the meantime, he might even pick up some Path to Exiles.
So Monastery Swift Spear from Brad. And then cast Lightning Bolt. We'll see if the bolt is at Karn or at Tom.
It seems very likely that Brad wants to get the Karn off the table.
You see he's tanking on it, though, showing not a lot of confidence that if he spends his spells beating Oblivion Stone and beating Karn, just he's not sure he'll win from there.
Yeah, he might just not have enough in the tank to make that happen. He still has no green source, so he can't cast a Become Immense, even if he were to top deck one without also finding a land.
Bolts down the Karn, attacks Tom to 13. We go back over to Tom Ross. His draw for the turn is going to be Expedition Map. That one actually plays here. He can play and crack it, all while leaving up Oblivion Stone, setting up an Ulamog 1 turn away.
Even just gets to cast a second Ulamog on the following turn.
And that should take care of all of Brad's permanents. So here we see Expedition Map from Tom Ross. Finds another copy of Urza's Tower. He'll play it and say go. He just needs to survive this turn, and he's got an Oblivion Stone, and that is enough for Brad Nelson. He scoops up the cards. Game 1 goes to Tom Ross, Green-White Tron.
Yeah, that a bit of an upset in game 1 there. Brad mulliganing to 6 in a hand that didn't quite come together, and Tom's draw ended up being made. That second top deck Karn and then the Tron coming down the pipeline the turn after, that was very fortuitous for Tom.
So Tom Ross now up a game. Is he trying to hand Brad Nelson his first loss of the day? As we go ahead and look over the sideboards. For Death's Shadow, you usually don't see too much sideboard for this matchup because it's something that the players will consider to be favorable. His board is 2 Hooting Mandrills, a Stony Silence, an Ancient Grudge, 2 Faith Shield, a Gut Shot, 2 Path to Exile, 3 Ravenous Trap, 2 Inquisition of Kozilek, and a Pyroclasm.
Stony Silence is generally pretty effective in this matchup. You turn off the Chromatic Spheres and Stars and Expedition Map. You can stunt Tom's development with that card. It's pretty reasonable. There's some argument for Path to Exile. It's not a great card in the matchup. If they just cast Karn, you're really in trouble. But if they cast Wormcoil Engine, then you wish that you had it. So that one might come in, though it's not as exciting as the Stony Silence. And then we go over to Tom's side. He's got a Grafdigger's Cage, another Oblivion Stone, 2 Thragtusk, a Rest in Peace, 2 Blessed Alliance, 3 Nature's Claim, 1 Path to Exile, 2 Warping Whale, a Ghost Corridor, and a Gemstone Cavern. So he'll be on the play, so probably not touching that one.
Yeah, I was going to be like, there's a lot to like in this sideboard. The 2 Blessed Alliance and the Path to Exile ups his removal count. But then there's a lot of other cards that I think if he wanted to, he could go toward here.
Yeah, those ones are slam dunks. Thragtusk is totally reasonable. Some life gain, a pretty large creature. That one definitely plays. The extra Oblivion Stone, we saw the first one. It was pretty good in that game. You know, you have to hit Tron to make it effective, but it is a clean answer to any creature if you're able to get it down on time. Warping Whale is okay in this matchup. It's not great. It produces a surprise chump blocker, which is pretty whatever. I don't really like that one too much.
It can, I guess, hit a Step Links. Brad is playing a Step Links build. I think the odds that you could get Monastery Swift Spear with it are pretty low.
Yeah, that one's likely to stay on the sideboard. Interestingly, it can counter Thoughtseize, though that's unlikely to matter.
Well, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't counter it on turn 1, and that's when Tom cares.
Right.
Yeah. So players will get ready for a second game here. Over Star City Games, we have our weekly sale running this weekend. This is something we have at the store. It's different every weekend. Right now, we have up to 50% off select standard singles. And you see here, you can find out about these weekly sales. We have them running every week, a different promotion. This one will be going on all weekend through tomorrow, Monday, or through this coming Monday morning. At 11 a.m., we start next week's sales. So if you want to get some of these deals, head on over to StarCityGames.com this weekend. Now for Tom Ross, he is your 2016 Players Champion. The 33-year-old, originally from Louisiana, now resides here in Roanoke, Virginia. 16 Open top 8s and 5 wins. 4 Invitational top 8s and 2 wins. These are some of the strongest conversion rates. And you also have to keep in mind that these Open top 8s, 13 of them are from the era of 2-day Opens. These 16 top 8s are among the most difficult tournaments we've had here on the SCG Tour.
Very, very impressive player, Tom Ross. Demonstrated extremely wide range over the course of this year. Top 8s with many different styles of strategies. One of which being a win with Green-White Tron earlier this year.
And Tom, 3 different Open wins this year. It's more than any other player here at the Players Championship. 8 top 8s. The next player here would be Jeff Hoagland with 5.
His resume is above average. By a lot.
Yeah, I'm like, he is. Not kidding. 2016 has been his year. Already locked for day 2 of play here. Trying to win his second pod to get himself into the quarterfinals. Tom, I'm going to go down to 6 cards here for game 2 for Brad Nelson. Now also living in Roanoke, originally from Fargo, North Dakota, the 30-year-old. Quite the resume to his name as well. Currently a Platinum Pro this year. Players Championship winner in 2014. Semifinalist 2015. Player of the Year back in 2010 season of all of Magic the Gathering. One of the more storied players in Magic's history.
The only player to win Player of the Year in a heads-up playoff.
Yeah. He tied Guillaume Matignon in 2010. Had to go to a special playoff at the first Pro Tour the next year to determine the Player of the Year. Tom has kept on 6, and we will start with the second game. Brad will lead off with Street Wraith. Once again, notching his life total down a few.
Everything's going according to plan.
Yeah. Blood Crypt into Inquisition of Kozilek will put him down to 16. From Tom Ross, we see a Razorverge Thicket, 1 Tron piece, Expedition Map, Chromatic Star, Sylvan Scrying, and Path to Exile. This actually has a lot of play for this matchup.
Yeah, both has the interactive spell and the Path to Exile, as well as plenty of stuff. You know, he has there a Tron land plus Sylvan Scrying Expedition Map, which can get him up to Tron naturally. No payoff card just yet, but this hand is troublesome. This is a real decision for Brad to be making. You see it's off of Inquisition, those coming in off the sideboard, and they tag both interactive spells and Tom's development spells, so that one does make sense here.
Yeah, and this will really... Brad has to sculpt his game plan with this turn. Is he going to try to keep Tom off Tron, or is he going to take Tom's interaction and hope to kill him before it matters?
Given that Tom has yet to produce a payoff card, and he doesn't have, say, an Ancient Stirring that's just a Chromatic Star that has to naturally redraw, assuming that Brad's draw is reasonably aggressive, I would probably just take the Path to Exile.
Yeah, now, it really depends what Brad's hand looks like, too. If he doesn't think he can race that natural the Tron, Tom should have Tron set up by turn 4 with this hand.
And if he just has 1 threat, let's say his hand would be particularly weak to a Karn,
right,
then you probably just would prioritize more highly getting rid of Tron.
Well, Brad will take Path to Exile, which leaves Tom with the play of Urza's Power Plant into Map. But Nelson's going to have to be careful. Tom's pickup for the turn was a copy of Blessed Alliance, so he does actually have another kill spell, but as you see here, Brad doesn't know it. Tom's showing him the 3 cards he knows about for a second time. Keeping that one in front of him a secret. It is the removal spell, though. Blessed Alliance. Now it's on Brad to get some pressure going.
It looks like Brad does have a Thoughtseize in hand as well. If his turn here was something like Swift Spear Thoughtseize, that would be a very good sequence for him here. And he will go Master Swift Spear and Inquisition of Kozilek. Okay, another discard spell.
It's a lot of discard. And he gets to see the Blessed Alliance Tom picked up. See
this
if
is
he's
actually
still interested in taking it. Yeah.
Pretty excellent, because he doesn't have to take Alliance here because Tom can only use that in combat. He can take the Sylvan Scrying and get Tom off of Tron, and then Thoughtseize on the following turn and take the Blessed Alliance.
Now, with Tom having a map already in play, does it, I guess you'd be worried if he takes Blessed Alliance, Tom then casts Scrying next turn, and then has Tron basically locked up.
Right.
That is interesting. So Brad goes for that line. Could try to take Tom off Tron, or he could just keep going after the removal spells.
There is an argument, if Tom were able to peel into Karn and then find the last Tron piece naturally the turn after that, then this line ends up punishing Brad a little bit over just taking the Blessed Alliance and having a Thoughtseize for Karn on the next turn. That's really the strong consideration here, though I do like just going for the Scrying.
Yeah, so Brad will take Sylvan Scrying, so now Tom off of Tron and hits him down to 18. One thing, though, you got to say about the Tron deck, it is nothing if not resilient. Tom, on his second turn, picks up a copy of Ancient Stirrings, which could very easily turn into that second Tron piece anyway.
Yeah, a lot of redundancy in this deck.
And after 2 turns, Tom is still at a very healthy 18 life points. So we'll see here an Expedition map on the table for Tom Ross. Hand is Blessed Alliance, Razorverge Thicket. There's an Ancient Stirrings that Brad does not know about, and the last card's Chromatic Star. So Tom will lead with Stirrings. And the only land he finds is another copy of Power Plant. That is a miss for Tom Ross. And he'll cast Chromatic Star. And just have to pass. He did pick up Power Plant, but yeah, not a great line for Tom Ross. No choices, though. Only one colorless spell among the top 5.
And for now, he gets to put those 4 cards he wasn't trying to draw to in the bottom of his deck, though casting the Scrying or cracking the map would just shuffle those back in.
Yeah, and this game's taking on a really interesting flavor, right? Normally, you see Death's Shadow win this matchup by being fast, by sneaking under Tron. What Brad's doing, turn 1 discard, turn 2 Monastery Swiftsphere discard, turn 3 second discard. This isn't how this deck normally plays out.
Right. He's just overloading on disruption. He's stopping Tom from really being able to get off the ground.
Yeah, fires off another Thoughtseize. He takes the Blessed Alliance out of Tom's hand before Tom's able to get rid of his creature and then attacks. Tom Ross down to 16. But the interesting part of the strategy is that Tron is much more able to fight this game plan. You see, you look at Tom Ross's hand, it looks like he picked up another Expedition map.
Yeah, at some point, Brad has to kill Tom. Otherwise, Tom is going to inevitably produce a Karn, produce a Wormcoil Engine, produce an Ugin.
Yeah, that's just what the deck does. You see Tom cracks the map in play. Some slight odds here, right? If he finds a Tron piece now, that means if he top decks one the next turn, he might just have Tron.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll go for Urza's Mine. That's his second one. He'll cast another map with that and say go. 1 card remaining in his hand. Both players know it. It's an Urza's Power Plant. Not the missing piece he needs. It's the second copy of one he has.
Yeah. Tom has officially found the proper tools to produce all the mana that he could ever want. The resources he's choked on, he does not yet have a big payoff card. There's nothing to do with this mana once he assembles it. And the question mark is, does he have the time that he needs? When is Brad actually going to kill him? And I don't know how much Brad has in his hand on that front.
A swing with Monastery Swiftspear. I mean, Brad's clock is not helping him very much here. He's done his swing attacks for the last 2 turns have been 2 points each. This one might be a 1-point swing. His hand is a land, a Become Immense, and then whatever his draw was for the turn.
Probably be moving a little bit faster if it was a team or battle.
Yeah, I think so. I probably we'd be going to game 3. Probably not a haste creature either.
Right.
But at just one damage a turn, there's just no way that Tom won't recover in time.
Yeah, he's, you draw a card every turn, obviously. He has a Chromatic Star as a redraw. Plenty of hits when it comes to the top end.
So swing by Swiftspear. Puts Tom Ross to 15. And now a Death's Shadow from Brad Nelson. And a fetch land. Now, and you have to watch out for. He can put himself down to 7 if need be. That means that Death's Shadow will be a 6/6.
And Brad's really hoping not to get hit by an Ugin or an Oblivion Stone on this turn.
So it's close to lethal next turn. Right now, Brad on the next attack he's one short. He could put Tom to 1.
There's a lot of cards in his deck that can produce 1 more damage. Any fetch land.
Anything that hurts himself.
Yeah, any dual land, Gitaxian Probe. Worst possible draw, of course, Mishra's Bauble, but even that, it's a spell, right? That gives him 1.
Yeah, it would be like Wild Nacatl.
Yeah, Step Links, Wild Nacatl.
Yeah, you're right. There really just aren't. If you're looking for a card that doesn't pump Death Shadow and doesn't prowess the Swift Spear, there are very few cards that don't do those.
And it's unlikely that Brad's going to play around Blessed Alliance. Tom has the mana for that now, but beyond just cleverly choosing the targets for his creatures, I think he would still go for lethal if he had the opportunity.
Right. Tom mapped for the last Tron piece on his turn, played it, and then said go. Now a draw from Brad. Did he completely brick here? Thoughtseize. No, he did not.
That's the opposite of a brick.
And this should be lethal. Thoughtseize is Tom. It puts him down to 5. The Death Shadow is going to be an 8/8. The Master Swift Spear is a 2/3. That's 10 damage. Become Immense should be 6 or 6 more. So that will do this one. Now he's got to play around what any card that Chromatic Star might use.
Yeah, Tom could crack Star and draw Path to Exile or Blessed Alliance.
So we'll see which one Brad wants to become Immense. It's going to prowess the Swift Spear and then pump it.
I imagine that you would target the Swift Spears because the Death Shadow is so much larger naturally.
Yeah, that way if Tom does draw the path, you still have him on the next turn.
They all die to the same things.
Well, Tom with 2 lands in hand, his only choice here is to crack the Star, right?
Yeah, he could
And hope what happens happens.
crack the Star or just concede for no reason.
All right, cracks the Star. What did he draw? It's Ugin. That's not going to do it. Brad Nelson takes the second game and evens this one up at 1 game apiece.
Tom needed that to be his draw step on the previous turn. It actually would have been excellent if that were the case.
Well, no, he
Or
had
no,
to,
he had
no,
to- he
he
had
had
to
to make
tutor for
Tron.
Tron. He had to tutor for Tron,
It was
you're
actually
right.
set up really nice, right? He just
Yeah.
made Tron with 8 mana. He was going to untap and draw
he
an 8
needed
drop.
to draw Tron and then crack Star into that. Right.
Yeah, I mean, right. One of these issues is just his deck is a turn slow in this matchup. So if he has to find all his Tron pieces, he's just not fast enough.
Those Inquisitions for Brad did a lot of work there. Tom just had to navigate that game pretty inefficiently, using a lot of mana every turn to just find lands.
So Brad Nelson evens it up at 1 game apiece. They'll be going to a third game. This will put Tom Ross back on the play. Over at StarCityGames.com, we have been running game night all year. This is the promotion run around the country at stores near you. You can win exclusive tokens and pins just for playing the Magic that you'd normally play during the week. This December, the pin and token we'll be giving away is the 6/6 Whale of Fintuition. It's part of our parody series, copy of the Tempest Rare Intuition. You can win this just at your stores by playing. Next month, we'll be giving away... These just keep getting better. The Squeaky Cheeky Acorn Breaker. This is, of course, your 1/1 Goblin or Chipmunk token. And if your store gets signed up now, we can still get you signed up in time for February's promo, which is the Corgi Firewalker. It's everyone's favorite dog friend or favorite protection from red tutu.
Great sideboard card.
Yeah. Find out where to play or find out how to sign up. StarCityGames.com/game night.
It's probably not Patrick Sullivan's favorite card.
No, it's really hard. It's hard to beat if you're playing just red cards. Guy's a real jerk.
A couple weeks ago, I had the displeasure of playing against Circle of Protection Red with a very heavy red deck.
They usually don't have enough mana to activate it for as many times as you have grape shots. I'm not saying they couldn't, but just it doesn't normally happen.
Right. They would have to be some other kind of absurd
If
combo
I was
deck.
playing Ignite Memories, maybe they'd have enough.
Yes.
That could happen.
Ignite Memory is probably not generally very good against a deck that is casting Circle of Protection Red.
Well, they'd have enough Storm Triggers of it. It's probably fine. But at that point, why are you not grape shotting?
Yeah, what's the most storm you've ever even had for Ignite? I don't think I've ever seen more than like 5 or 6.
That was always the most fun card to storm people out with because you never really were sure you were going to win the game. I mean, you could win it from some really questionable boards, and that was why it was great.
Yeah.
You know, just like, ooh, well, I'm about to be dead. How about Ritual Ignite Memories, and you're at 10. Let's hope you got a big card. And then, he's like, it's a double-edged sword here.
I would just reveal a 1-mana spell every time with that card. I just know it.
It's not very good if you're going to do that.
No, that's why I don't play it.
Be good against Tom Ross's deck. You could kill him real fast.
See, if I cast it against Tom Ross, I would hit Ancient Stirrings with every copy.
Yeah.
And then he would show me that his hand was, Ulamog, Karn.
Like, why can't you show me those? I'm like, well, they cost too much.
Yeah, I wanted to win.
I can understand that.
It's a reasonable perspective.
Players looking at their 7s here for the deciding game. Interesting plan, though, by Brad that game, right? Instead of being the faster deck, he was actually the disruptive deck.
And on the play, you're able to leverage those discard spells a lot more aggressively.
Tom keeping on 7. See if Brad's on the same. Remember, game 1, we saw Brad keep a hand with no lands in it. Just a bunch of the free cantrips. A Bauble, a Gataxian Probe, a Street Wraith. Didn't actually have a land for the first turn of the game. Can be one of the difficulties with those unknown cards, the free cyclers. They become big probabilistic things.
Could be anything.
Right. And you have to treat it like that too. It's like, well, this is 40% to be a land, and this is 40% to be a land. So
could even be another cycler.
If you have 3 free cyclers, well, we have like 1.2 lands in our opener. So the value, the EV is there, but then you have to kind of weight it, and it's nicer when you know what your cards are because there's not a fail rate involved.
Schrodinger's first land drop.
Schrodinger played Death Shadow.
Yeah, this deck is definitely for him.
I believe that's why Steplinks goes by the name Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, that's just a common nickname.
Tom Ross, turn 1 is going to be Urza piece into Expedition map. Always kind of one of those dangerous starts. This is one of the starts that produces turn 3 Tron.
Yes. You know that 1.5 Tron pieces are there. You assume that Tom's at least making a second land drop.
And there we go. There is the Schrodinger's cat. It's Steplinks turn 1 from Brad Nelson. Goes to 17 to cast.
On turn 2, currently, Tom is both taking 0 and 4 damage.
I like where we're going with this conversation. Tom draws Urza's Tower, so he will have the turn 3 Tron. Didn't have it in the opener, but you kind of mentioned this is how Tom rolls. Does have a Sylvan Scrying in hand, too, so would have made it anyway. It looks like, though, his payoff is Ugin and not Karn.
Yeah, one's a little slow.
Well, now Brad knows. He sees the tower into pass. Okay, Tron's coming. What is he going to do about it?
I would attack Tom for a lot of damage. I think
20 if you could.
Right, 20 would be the number I would aim to deal.
Monastery Swift Spear, Thoughtseize, Stomping Ground. All right. Brad goes to 13 here. He'll get to take a card from Tom's hand, and we see Sylvan Scrying, Ancient Stirrings, Forest, Ugin, and Path to Exile. This is actually kind of interesting. Tom has the natural Tron, but he's light on interaction. He doesn't have a payoff next turn. He has a path, but he doesn't have the white mana.
Right. He has a forest that's not really doing anything. He'd like to cast Ancient Stirrings, but he doesn't really have time for that. He can't leverage his land drops that way. He wants to either be producing the 3rd Tron land or a white source.
I think he still, I would imagine, has to map for the Tron piece, but may not have any plays. Brad will take Ugin, and now Tom's going to have a decision as to what to map for. As you see, Brad Nelson swings in for 4 damage. Tom could just draw the Ugin. That's probably the best plan. Crack map for Tron piece, draw Ugin, or draw Karn.
Draw Karn this turn, draw Ugin next turn.
Yeah. We'll see what Tom wants to do in end step. This is a big decision. Getting the Tron piece, what only matters here if he then top decks a colorless payoff spell.
Brad currently has 3 cards in his graveyard, right?
Yeah.
So in order to become immense, a fetch land will put him up to 4, and if he has the Battle Rage, that's the 5th card.
Is Tom going to go for the Tron piece? It looks like he is. There's Urza's power plant. Now the big question, can he top deck a Karn or a Worm Coil Engine this turn? Either one of those would be huge for Tom Ross.
Yeah, Worm Coil would be great here. Karn would be pretty good.
Draw Oblivion Stone. Okay, it's 8 mana to go fully cycle through it, so he's a turn off. You see he's going to cast Ancient Stirrings. Finds another power plant in there and a Worm Coil Engine, but picks Chromatic Star.
That one's great. Lets him cast Path to Exile this turn.
Oh, okay, yeah. So he plays the Sphere, leaves up mana for Path.
And then next turn he gets the access to playing and cracking O-Stone.
And I like the speed with which Tom went for that play. If he doesn't find a star effect, that play really backfires.
He could have also found his Spellskite.
Okay.
That one's reasonable at stopping Brad from killing him.
Brad plays a fetch land. Step Links goes up to 2/3. Swings both. He knows about the Path to Exile. Now, of course, if Tom paths the Swift Spear, it will pump the Step Links.
Yeah, any land entering the battlefield for Brad.
So this swing is only for 3 right now. Brad attacks, and Tom takes it and just untaps.
Yeah, Brad knows about the path. He's not going to play into it. And if Tom's not taking lethal and he just has O-Stone on this turn, he doesn't really need to commit anything.
Brad's hand's very heavy on lands. We'll see where Tom Ross goes. Here's the third Tron piece. It's Urza's power plant. Taps the tower, plays Oblivion Stone, leaves up 5, says go. This is looking really strong for Tom Ross.
Yeah, he has the Oblivion Stone to clean up the Step Links and the Swift Spear, and then from there, he'll just have Path to Exile in hand if anything gets too crazy.
Inquisition of Kozilek from Brad Nelson that will prowess his Swift Spear. But the damage is done here. Tom doesn't need any of the cheap spells in his hand. He still has Path to Exile.
Yeah, this Inquisition stripping that's just not that big of a deal.
Yeah. Brad can take Path or Someone's Scrying. He'll take the removal spell. But he has to get through this Oblivion Stone. Tom's almost certain to just sacrifice it. He will attack. This is for 4. The Swift Spear is a 2/3, as is the Step Links. We'll see if Tom even cares. Maybe he actually takes the damage.
In Brad's 75, there's 2 copies of Lightning Bolt, and that's likely a card that Brad has boarded out here.
Right.
So as long as Tom isn't dying, he's probably fine taking most amounts of damage.
No blocks on Tom's side. He's going to give Brad priority. See just how much Brad invests into the attack. Looks like he'll get 1 additional land. That'll move this attack up to 6 damage. Of course, deals 2 extra to himself along the way for good measure.
And in this matchup, Green-White Tron is a deck that doesn't pressure your life total too much. You just want to get every duel untapped in case you need that for the Death Shadow.
Is 6 damage enough? We'll see whether it is. And I like some posturing by Brad. You see, watch his body language as he makes this play. I'm fairly certain that the last 2 fetchable lands are already in Brad's hand. So how he plays this Windswept Heath is going to be really interesting. And Brad's going to be one of the better players at doing this.
Yeah.
Tom down to 7. Not enough. Draws a card. It's Blessed Alliance. That's a big one here. Killing a creature and gaining 4, certainly 2 things Tom's interested in.
He's back to having the ability to crack the Oblivion Stone and then still have a removal spell in hand.
It's just the redundancy we've seen out of Tron. We've seen Brad take cards from Tom, both this game and last, only to have Tom draw the same card again. Or something that's very similar.
Yeah.
You take a path, he'll draw Blessed Alliance.
And Tom getting very close to pulling off the upset here.
Yeah, Horizon Canopy was the play. We go back to Brad Nelson. He's got Tom to 7, but a lot of that's Tom's own doing. Just not concerned.
Yeah, Death Shadow is just not a deck that's going to kill Tom outside of combat. Either these creatures are doing it or Brad is losing. And it has some reach. You know, you can have a Monastery Swift Spear. It has haste. You can cast that, become Immense Team of Battle Rage all in just 1 turn. Though Tom both has the current board covered and 1 future threat down the line with that Blessed Alliance.
Another Whimsicott Heath from Brad. He'll attack for 3. Is this going to be enough? Tom, checking the graveyard count. He's got to be wary of Delve cards.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed Alliance and Sylvan Scrying in his hand. He has 9 mana here, so in theory he could escalate a Blessed Alliance and still leave up Oblivion Stone.
It would probably not be a great use of the Alliance.
Drew a card off Chromatic Sphere, draws a Path to Exile. He's now just flush on removal.
Mm-hmm.
He'll crack the Oblivion Stone. Brad's creatures are gone. And now Brad is left threatless with Tom on 2 removal spells. Tom has so much time to work with.
Yeah, he does need to find something to actually end the game, but Blessed Alliance, Path to Exile on hand, that will buy him a lot of time, and currently it's an empty board.
So we'll see how he goes to find a threat. Starts with Sylvan Scrying, floating 1. Will continue to develop his mana. Urza's Tower looks like what he'll look for. Or maybe Sanctum of Ugin. Yeah, 1 mana floating for Tom Ross. He's got Brad covered for a while here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his only white source in play currently is the Horizon Canopy. At some point, he's going to want to crack that. He does have a Chromatic Sphere or a Star in his hand. He has one of those effects that can produce 1 white mana for him.
Plays that Star, and then Sanctum of Ugin. That was the card he searched for off of Sylvan Scrying. Says go. Remaining hand are just 2 removal spells. Yeah, see, the last 2 lands in Brad's deck are in his hand. He'll start with Gitaxian Probe. That puts Brad down to 8. And now knows about the 2 kill spells.
Yeah, Tom says, all right, now you know that my hand is great.
So now Brad, I guess this means he can play his discard more intelligently. If he gets 1 threat, he may not want to play it out until he's taking cards out of Tom's hand.
Yeah, and currently Tom is not presenting any kind of way to win the game. When he does, he will in all likelihood be able to trigger Sanctum of Ugin and make it kind of a sure thing.
Yeah.
But for now, Brad has a little bit of time.
Yeah, it'll be over when Tom finds maybe an Ulamog. You generally don't want to get into a top deck war against a Tron deck. They're very good at them, but it doesn't mean they never lose them.
Mm-hmm.
You see for Brad Nelson plays Sacred Foundry tapped and says go. Draw for Tom, no help here. It's another copy of Urza's Power Plant. And you see the conservative way that Tom's playing this, he has more redraws. He has a Horizon Canopy on the board. He has a Chromatic Star on the board. He's just not going for either of them.
Mm-hmm. Those are currently his only ways to produce white mana, and he wants to make sure that these removal spells are still castable. In particular, by having both on the battlefield, he's able to cast them both in the same turn if he needs to for whatever reason.
So go back to Brad Nelson. He does have a Monastery Swift Spear in hand, but not wanting to run it out, not just yet. Respecting Tom's removal.
Yeah, it's certainly worth taking a draw step or 2 to see if he can produce Inquisition of Kozilek or Thoughtseize. Start making some inroads on those removal spells.
Thrag Tusk from Tom Ross, and that is a clock. Tom goes to 12. Brad is just at a very low 8 life points.
Yeah, this is just a 2-turn clock.
Even has Vigilance with that Blessed Alliance. He can untap it.
Yeah, and if Tom gets in 1 shot with the Thrag Tusk, then suddenly the beast token it leaves behind, were it to die, is lethal as well.
Brad does have a Thoughtseize, but it's just not going to be enough. He extends the hand, and it is Tom Ross.
Pulls off the upset.
Yeah, pulls off the upset in 3 over Death Shadow.